that followed them, so powerful. The reason why they were seeing the manifestation of signs, wonders, and miracles, and was living literally under an open heaven, was because they were unified. Amen. They were unified. They had a unity amongst them that was unbreakable. They had an unbreakable bond. It was tight. You know, in my family, we call it being thick as thieves, but you know, they were thick as holy people. All right, so we're going to finish up tonight, and that's the goal, is to finish up. So who had, we left off at Acts 10, right? That's when we talked about Peter at Cornelius' house. Mm-hmm. We talked about Peter at Cornelius' house, right? Yeah. Okay. And who had Malachi 3:10? Jamila. Okay, so you're going to read that? All righty. And Pastor Irma's going to get the other mic, or Pastor Zach will do that for us. Who had Leviticus 27:30? All right, so who's reading Leviticus 27:30? All righty.
Who's reading?
Chantel. Wait, babe, go, you want to go that way? Thank you. But we're starting at Malachi 3:10, and we're going to start with Aaliyah. She's going to read that. And then we're going to Deuteronomy 28:12. Okay. And then 2 Kings 7:19. We're just going to do 2 Kings, actually 7:2, because 2 and 19 are really the same. Who has that? Who's going to take that?
I'll take it.
Okay. And Colossians 3 verses 1 and 2. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Colossians 3 verses 1 and 2. And then 1 Corinthians 16:2. Nikaya had that, right, Nikaya?
Nika had it, but I can.
Nika? Okay, well, whoever.
Nika's here.
All right, so let's just get to the Word of God, and then we'll just bring it all together. How about we do that? We'll do all the scriptures, so at least we know we did all the scriptures. I think it's important that we do all the scriptures, and then we'll talk about the open heaven. So we're starting at Malachi 3:10, and this is participatory. I like that. I like that we are all participating. We're all coming together, reading the Word together. For our viewing audience, we do have a document that we all have. If you would like one, you can email us, or just put it in there and put your email address, and our team will get you that document as well. So Malachi 3:10.
Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven, and pour out for you such blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it.
That is such a powerful prophetic scripture that tells us the importance of not just tithing, because tithing is not just about money. Tithing is about the heart. Yeah. So it tells us about the condition of the heart. And I think it's important. Do you have your, can you read verse 11 as well?
And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, so that he will not destroy the fruit of your ground, nor shall the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says the Lord of hosts.
Amen.
Read verse 12. Go ahead and read verse 12 for us.
And all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a delightful land, says the Lord of hosts.
Yeah, that's it right there. That is the essence of an open heaven, where people see, not just hear about your blessings, but they see the physical manifestation of the blessing. The one thing I think I love and appreciate about Bishop T.D. Jakes' life is you can see the evidence of an open heaven over his life. Because literally, he started out like we started out. And the Bible says this in Revelations 12, verse 11, that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. There is overcoming power in your testimony. That's why you can never ever live another man's life, because their testimony and your testimony will never ever, their testimony will never ever suffice for your life. You've got to have your own testimony, because your testimony comes as a result of a test. That's why the Lord said, test me in this. Try me, test me, and see if I won't give you a testimony. And the testimony will be, your life will be blessed. So when we see people come from the back of the pack with literally nothing, people made fun of him. He has this testimony that they used to call him One Suit Jakes, and how his wife used to wash his suit in the washing machine. Now she ain't washing them she ain't even washing them, right? And she don't even have to do the laundry, because the windows open and the blessings were poured out, so much so that I'm sure they have maid service. They probably own the cleaners too. But I love that testimony of his life and the evidence that the heavens have opened throughout Scripture. When we see the heavens have opened over someone's life, the evidence that follows that is signs, wonders, and miracles. It's blessings. They go into a total, their lives are literally metamorphosed. They go from being a caterpillar to a butterfly. Exactly. Everybody sees the beauty of the Lord in their lives. We'll talk a little bit more about that, because I believe that's a scripture that must be caught. Not just taught, but it's got to be caught. Because you can preach tithe, but if people's hearts aren't right, they'll get offended rather than inspired. The word should inspire you to say, that's me, right? That's how I want to be. I want to be like, I want to be the sanctified Cyrus.
Yeah. Come on. Yes, Lord.
Yeah, because Cyrus wasn't a Jew, but he wasn't part of the remnant of God, but God had touched his heart to give. So I want to be a sanctified Cyrus, where God can trust me with money. That if God gave me $1 million, he knows I'm not going to keep, $999,000 for myself and then break somebody off $10. Yes. So, all right, let's go to Leviticus 27:30. Who's got that scripture? Leviticus 27, verse 30.
And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. If a man wants at all to redeem any of his tithes, he shall add 1/5 to it.
So all of the tithe, when the windows of heaven open, what God is doing is he's following it up. He's saying, listen, this tithe thing, this isn't about what man is trying to get from you. This is about what I require of you. See, the windows, God will open the windows of heaven, but you activate it. You're the point of activation. So it's up to you you activate that thing. And how do you activate that? The Lord says this in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 6. It says, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. When these people that had these open heaven experience had sought the Lord or was currently seeking the Lord when the heavens opened, their hearts was yielded toward the Lord. Their hearts was right. And because their hearts was right, when God asked them to give him something, they were willing to give it. Like Noah, we can go back. I think you guys remember that. We looked at Noah's life and how Noah had, in obedience, given God what God had asked. And so for over 100 years, he's building an ark and being made a ridicule, laughed at. Yet when the heavens opened,
Come on.
yeah, the deep broke. And the rain started to send. And then you guys remember the ark was lifted up off of this platform because the heavens had opened and the rain had come to move the ark from one location to God's location. And at the end of that thing, when God began to dry up the rain from the earth, the ark landed on Mount Araka. So God took Noah from a platform to a mountain. But every great man go to a mountain. Every great man go end up on a mountain with God. Yeah. So God is letting us know that the tithe And I want to just focus on the tithe, because the tithe is really an act of obedience. It's an act of love and worship. So that the tithe, he's saying that belongs to me. And when you give that to me, the obedience to that causes the heavens to open up. Because you tried me. You tried God. You said, okay, here you go. And you didn't try him with anger, like, okay, I'm going to give it to you and see what happened. No, you tried him in faith. You said, here it goes, and I know what you're going to do now. All right, that's simple, isn't it?
Yes.
Very simple. Next one is what? Deuteronomy? Oh, 28. That's just such a... Wait, I want you guys to... Come on, you guys. This is a chapter of blessing. I think this is the one to make everybody shout. You know, everybody. That's when they get the good music. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 28. Are you guys there with your Bibles that don't have a... All right, let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 12.
The Lord will open to you his good treasure, the heavens, to give the rain to your land in its season, and to bless all the work of your hand. You shall lend to many nations, but shall not borrow.
Read on the third. Read on.
And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You shall be above all and not beneath. If you heed the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, and are careful to observe them, so you shall not turn aside from any of the words which I command you this day, to the right or the left, to go after other gods to serve them.
There you go. Here's what Moses said. Moses had an intimate relationship with God. He is the author of Deuteronomy. And Moses had this intimate relationship with God, so he understood the command of God and the hand of God. He had been walking with God for 40 years, leading the people of God, and he understood the command of God and the hand of God. He had a faith walk with God. God said, all the other prophets I speak to in a dream, but my prophet Moses, I speak mouth to mouth. My lips touch his lips. That's the kind of intimacy that God had with Moses. And so Moses wasn't just speaking for God. Moses was speaking to the people as God. He said, this is the Lord right here. The Lord will, he says, there is cursings for disobedience and there is blessings for obedience. And the blessing that the Lord will give you is his good treasure. And then he defines the good treasure. He said the Lord will open. Open. That means you're not doing it. God is doing it. Man's not doing it. God is doing it. This is the God kind of blessing. This isn't the kind of blessing you get when your boss tells you you got a raise. This is a supernatural blessing that God gives you out of obedience to his will and his command. We look throughout the Old Testament and we can see times when Israel was obedient and how God would just bless them. They would overtake enemies that are 10 times larger than them. How God would just bless them. How God says, I'm not sending you to a dry, desolate land. I'm sending you to a place flowing with milk and honey. And even when Israel was disobedient, the place flowing with milk and honey was still available. He didn't take it away, never took it away. He always kept it there because he would bring them back in alignment. It says the Lord will open to you. Not to everybody else.
Right.
This wasn't a blessing for everybody. This was a blessing for God's people.
Yes.
There are some things that God has reserved for his people only.
Yeah.
There are some things that the world will never ever be partakers of because they have not given their hearts to Jesus. The catalyst for your blessing, your open heaven encounter, is that you have a relationship with God through his son, Jesus. Yeah. Jesus shed his blood. And because of the blood, you are forgiven of sin and you have access by faith to enter into a place that is supernatural. Yeah. That's the beauty of walking as a born again believer. You have this supernatural access to these supernatural blessings that the rest of the world don't have. James said all good and perfect gifts come from above, from the Father of light. Yes. Where there is no variation of shadows. His light is so bright it can't be snuffed out.
Right.
And so all these good gifts that God opens up for us as a result of his obedience, our obedience to him. That's why he opens it up. And he says he will open up his good treasure. And I love that he explains the good treasure. He said the heavens. That's his good treasures right there. I mean, there are some treasures in the earth that are good, but there are some things that are stored up in the heavens that are super.
Yes.
That are beyond human explanation. That's why when Paul had this third heaven encounter, literally the heavens was opened up for Paul. And Paul began to talk about this encounter he had with the Lord. And he said, I know a man. He didn't even call it himself. Because you know what? It wasn't the natural Paul, the man Paul. It was this supernatural encounter. It wasn't me. It was a man. It wasn't a man that maybe was on the inside of me. But he had this experience with God. The heavens literally was opened up. And when Paul's talking about this encounter, and he said, and he saw things that are unexpressible, that I can't even describe the things that this man actually encountered. What happened was the heavens opened. Paul had got to see into the third heaven, moved beyond the first heaven and the second heaven, and got to see into the third heaven. And he saw these good treasures that God is talking about. He says, I can't even describe it to you because there's nothing in the earth that compares to it. So I can't give you a description of really what it really was. I can only tell you that it was unspeakable. Unspeakable. What a blessing. It's so phenomenal. I can't even describe it. Well, what color was it? Well, it was undescribable. What a blessing, right? I mean, what happened? Well, it's just let me think. You start trying to get things in the earth to help people identify with these good treasures, but you can't. You just, because it cannot be understood by human reasoning or by a human mind. It's supernatural. So only the spirit can understand these things. And so when you start talking about spiritual things to people that are not spiritual, it perplexes them. They start to try to figure it out. Well, describe it. Like, describe Jesus. When Isaiah tried to describe him, he just said wonderful, counselor, the Prince of Peace. There was no other words to be able to describe Jesus. And so he used words that were, and phrases that were only a smidgen of an example of who he really is. Because if you try to describe even your own salvation, you would have to just say marvelous. Like I was lost. Like how lost was you? I was like out there lost. Like nobody could have did this for me. I meet people that are surprised that I'm saved, but nobody's more surprised than me. Aren't you more? Oh, my mom's like, I am. I mean, nobody's more surprised than me. And you're like that about your own salvation, right? I mean, because at the times that, even right now, because salvation works a work in you that tempers you and make you God-like. As you're walking with God. So you're shocked that you didn't cuss her out. You are shocked that you didn't pop your neck one time in the bank when the lady was being real slow and just, talking and you were in a hurry. I mean, aren't you surprised by some of the things that you don't do simply because, and you can't even describe it. I mean, there are your friends be with you, be like, girl, you took that, girl. They're trying to entice you. You're like, yeah, oh well. That's because you, in your own salvation experience, have had an open heaven to a degree where you turn from what was convenient and comfortable for you to something that is totally foreign, but something drew you. And all of us think about the day, the night, the hour that we got saved, and you went home knowing something happened, but don't even know what I need to do. I guess I'll just go back to that church next week and try to hold on to something. But you knew it, and even in that week, you just didn't have the enticement. See, I think we're trying to get people saved when we need to get them in the presence of God. We need to, as we stand in this open heaven, in this time where the heavens are, and I know the heavens are open because I'm getting unusual favor in areas that I wouldn't normally get favor, and I'm tempered in a way I haven't been tempered all of my life. Like, there are some days that I know you know yourself more than anybody, and you know when you have the proclivity to go on one. Yeah. And when you don't go on one and then you don't think about it for the next 2 hours either, you know the heavens are open. You say something's different. Yeah. Just our salvation experience was an open heaven encounter. And that's why you really did it this time. I know you got saved like 25 years ago. You went to the altar, you gave your life to the Lord, and you just went with, your boys and did your thing again, 2 days later. And that it didn't. Some people say, well, it didn't stick that time. It didn't stick for me. I mean, it just didn't work for me. Well, it didn't work because it didn't penetrate your heart. You had an experience in your mind, and maybe your feelings, you felt good, but it didn't saturate your heart, because when the heavens open up for you, something inside of you resonates with what's going on in the realm of the spirit. It becomes spiritual and not natural. You're not just saying the prayer because a preacher told you to say it. You're saying what you are hearing in the spirit. Your spirit gets ignited. Now it's more spiritual than it is natural. And that's why it stuck this time.
Yes. Amen.
Because it was spiritual.
Yeah.
I got saved at least 30 times before I got saved. I mean, every time I got in trouble, I got saved. Anybody else? Yeah, exactly. But a lot of us did. I mean, some of y'all got it the first time, but very few people that really happens, because I believe this. People really get that heart salvation that is of faith when they're out of answers. Mm-hmm. When they're out of answers. Yeah. When people come to God and they still got to figure it out. They still got 2 more people they could use up. They got 2 more bridges to cross. Right? And then it's when you're out, when all the bridges are burned and you have nobody else that you could use up, lie to, the stuff that people do. Then they finally get saved. It's because then they don't have anybody else but God. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother used to say, when God is all you have, then you have all you really need. Right. Amen. But as long as you can do it, then God becomes he becomes an option. God was on the option. He was in the option button for a long time for many of us. But then you have that time when the heavens open up. Yeah. And this thing finally makes sense to your spirit. Mm-hmm. And no matter what your knucklehead starts to say, you still come back. That's what I seen with you. My spiritual daughter. I mean, she came with some people, and they all went out. She stayed in. I mean, they tried to drag her out, and the Lord said, call her and tell her, you're of this house. God has touched your heart, and really, you stayed. Yeah. And they're still out. You get to see people's posts, and you be like, oh, Jesus, open the heavens over them too. Because, God wished that none be lost, right? Yeah. Right. So that's just really irritating. I admit they're cute, but ding, 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 ding. You sound like Christmas bells. But the heavens open, and we need to pray more for the heavens to be open. We need to afata a lot of people. Be open. Right. Because there are some people that are only going to get saved if they have that real encounter with God. My nephew's a barber, so I went to buy a shop today, and it's good to have folks in your family that can do stuff. I was like, oh, can you hit your AT up in the back? My kitchen is kind of dirty. People don't know about that, right? And so the white people are like, no, Pastor? I love it. So I said, can you hit me up? He said, yeah. So I would go by there, and he's doing my hair, and we're talking, and the Cowboys are on, and my mom's a big Cowboy fan, and poor lady. But the Cowboys are on, so we have a conversation about my mom, and he said, we're looking, and he's like, oh yeah, the Cowboys on, right? Grandma over there watching the game. I said, yeah, she gonna be at church. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, that, you know, she understands. And then I gave him the talk. So when you coming back to church? He was like, yeah, AT. He started moving their clothes faster. I was like, slow down now, slow down. I'm not going to throw you on the altar and put oil on you. But as I was walking away, he said, you know, I'll be back really. I need to come back, AT. I was like, okay. And what I realized is no amount of talking is going to get him to come back. He's got to have that encounter with God that takes God out of the option cart and put God in the place of necessity, a must-have, can't live without place in his life. And that happens several ways. One, the heavens get open over a person because they'll open over one person in the family. And then as the rest of the family sees that person who they never thought would actually for real be saved, it starts to say something to others. Yeah. People are impressed by the fact that you are really saved and you live saved. Yeah. They might not say it into your face, but when you leave, they be like, "Ooh, she done changed." Right? Yeah. And they call each other on the phone. Girl, for real, she done changed. I mean, that boy, for real, I don't think he doing that dope anymore. He just got his mind right. They have conversations about you. When the heavens are open over one person, it'll open over a nation. It happened in South America years ago, a couple of decades ago. It was back in the 80s and the 90s. There was so much violence in South America, literally, that even the police would just let the mobsters and the drug lords, do whatever they wanted to do. They could not stop them because if they would just murder them and their whole family. It was so much violence going on in South America that it was in a state of apostasy. It was desolate. People stopped going there for vacations because people would go on vacation and end up dead in their hotel. So the economy began to be ran by drug lords. And literally the people were enslaved to the drug lords. They were running everything. And finally, a young group of people, some young people, started to pray and cry out to God. Got on their knees, and literally, they were praying so much that their tears started to run down the sidewalks. Wow. That puddles of tears started to run down the sidewalk. And they just kept praying and praying. They started doing 40 days, and they just stayed in there and prayed. And they would have these prayer vigils. And more as they prayed, the heavens started to open. And people started to notice supernatural things happening among young people. These were like 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds. And very few of them was even 30. So as they're crying out to God, the heavens opened. That's the only thing they could describe. They said that God stepped in. He stepped into all of this insanity. He stepped into the problems and the trouble. And then the policemen started to pray with them. And then they called their army out and said, we need help. We've got to take back our nation. If we don't take back our nation, eventually it's going to be gone. There will be no nation. And it was a result of prayer, and the heavens opened for them. And literally their army got together and started one by one going to these drug lords and literally putting them in prison. And the whole nation started to change because the heavens opened over a group of kids desperate for God. Desperate for God. Your desperation is literally pressing into God. And as the heavens open up for you, you'll find that your family starts to change, that people around you start to get different, that hearts are not as hardened as they once was, that people start to live a life of real sincerity. Because we live in a world that is not always sincere. A lot of people, most people, are doing things because they want recognition. They're doing it because of how it looks outwardly rather than doing it because they just absolutely love God. How many people you know give you something simply and don't tell anybody? The moment you told somebody, you took God off the table, out of it, because it became about you. So we need the heavens open so that we can see a move of salvation in our nation. So that we can see the unlovable get saved. We can see homeless people turn from the degradation of homelessness to living again. And then we just stop throwing stuff at the problem. And the problem begins to dissipate because the heavens are open. When the heavens are open, people get sanity. Right? If we're just throwing food at it just keeps the problem going. But we need an open heaven experience because there's some things we can't deal with. It's really out of human control.
Right. Yeah.
It's out of human control. The violence that is going on, that we're watching within our own borders, what's going on at the Mexican border, people just being slaughtered, all of that. It's beyond human aid. We need the heavens to open, because when the heavens are open, we begin to respond righteously rather than fearfully.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
So Deuteronomy 28, the Lord will open up for you his good treasures. And not only will he open up for you his good treasures, but his good treasures is the heavens. And here's what happens when the heavens are open, the rain comes. Not just a physical rain, which is always good. We experience a little bit of that today. But the rain of his favor, the rain of his kindness, his goodness. When rain comes, it brings a refreshing, and it causes growth. People start to grow up. They stop being so self-centered. They start to, we have to have people that grow up. Because if everybody stayed babies, everybody stays selfish. Because babies are selfish. Mine, no.
Right.
So when the rain comes, when the rain from heaven comes, then people start to operate, here it is, in purpose.
Yes.
They start to operate in purpose. When we see a lot of people outside of purpose just living, or here it is, thank you. Here's what the Holy Spirit said, just existing. Because that's what happens when people aren't living, they're existing. And when people are existing, they're in barely make it mode. They're in struggle mode. And when life is a struggle, even though you have Jesus, if life is constantly a struggle, it is no fun.
Amen.
That's why God, he says hills and valleys. There are times and seasons for everything under the sun. And here it is. It's not going to always be the same. That's why God says times and seasons. There's a time to prosper. There's a time where you go through. But if your life is always about going through, then you need an open heaven so that you can experience some rain and you can experience some growth and you can go into a different season.
Yes.
There should be a harvest season for every believer.
Yes.
A harvest season. There should be a season where life changes for you. I mean, one of the things I was just talking to someone about it just yesterday, how my mother went back to school and got her degree. And I believe that was a time where the heavens was open, because you were in a time of favor where you had the strength to work a job, raise somebody else's kids, continue to go to school, and work a part-time job too. I mean, where you did some volunteer work, all of that, and still have the strength. And here it is, never miss church.
Come on. Right. Come on.
Never miss church. They wasn't like, where's Sister Burns at? She was going to school, working, taking care of her family, doing volunteer work so she could get into the career field that she was going to school for, and make church every single Sunday, Wednesday, whenever those doors was open. Friday, Saturday morning, she made us go to the church. All the time at the church. Spent their life. Oh. No, my whole point is, she did all of that and had the energy to do it. Oh, come on. God just talked to somebody right there. Some of y'all don't have the energy to go to work. You still calling off someday and be like, God, I don't feel good. I'm sick. I am sick. I don't feel good. You don't have the energy to finish the task at hand. You need an open heaven where God steps in and supernaturally charges your spirit so your body goes after what your spirit knows. She did that for what, 10 years? 10 years going to school. God had placed something in her heart. And what was in her heart, her body began to align itself to go after it. Her mind went after it. And you tell me a woman, and she was in her 30s, 40s. You tell me a woman at that age raising a family, had already raised 2 children, still had 2 more more to go, and had a husband and a family, cooking dinner on a regular basis. I mean, that's when the heavens are open, you have the energy to do the things that God has charged you to do. But if your spirit is dead, you won't get nothing accomplished. And I love what Bishop Jake said. I heard this today. He said, don't use prayer as an excuse to be lazy. Because prayer does not suffice for laziness. You can't be laying in bed all day talking about, Lord, I just bless your name. Oh, yeah, Lord, do it for me. Open the door. Lord said the heavens are open. Move in the time that I've given you. When the heavens are open, this is the time to move. When you if you want a new opportunity, you're in a position right now to get it. Oh, God is talking to somebody. You're in a position to get it. Don't stop making excuses and make a move.
Yes, God. Yes, God.
Stop making excuses and make a move. Take a faith move. Because the heavens are open and you got access to some things that you don't normally have access to right now. That's what the Spirit of the Lord is saying.
Amen.
I was talking to someone. They said they wanted a new job. I said, okay, so what application have you put in? Oh, I looked online. I said, well, looking and putting are different things. You got to put in that. You got a resume that will get you pretty much anything you want because you are gifted and anointed. It's a pleasure to have people like you in corporate. There's a corporation out there right now with a $90,000 tag on it looking for somebody like you.
Amen. Come on, Jesus. Amen.
So you can't be looking on Indeed, looking on Monster, going to your LinkedIn. You better get going and somebody said make a move.
Make a move.
Make a move. You're under an open heaven.
Yes, God.
Ezekiel was in exile. And he's standing by the river Shabar. And he's not just standing there gazing into nothing. He's just standing there with the Lord. And as he's standing there, the Lord said, let me show you what I got for you, Zeke. Boom, the heavens open up. And he began to see this heavenly encounter. And God showed him that in a place where they were literally captive. But God showed him something because he wasn't going to keep them there. He was showing them all the possibilities. What it looks like when you get on the other side of it. What does your tomorrow look like? Under this open heaven. I mean, do you really believe that you're under an open heaven? You got enough scriptures to back it up, but do you believe it?
Yes. Amen. Yes. Yes.
Paul says, I believe and therefore I speak.
Yes.
Every day you should be like, I'm under an open heaven.
That's right. Amen.
I read a scripture yesterday morning. I don't know who put it in my Bible, but I was so grateful for it. I said, wow, that is a word right there. The psalmist said in Psalms 119, verse 164, he says, 7 times a day I praise you because of your righteous judgment.
Yeah.
Psalms 119, verse 164. 7 times a day he's praising the Lord. 7 times a day he's being intentional.
Yes. Yes. Oh, come on.
7 times. So here's what I did. I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to praise you 7 times a day. The Lord said, he said, I double dare you.
Come on.
I double dare you to praise me 7 times a day. I said, what happens? He said, the heavens are open wider. I said, well, yeah, let it open to my cousins. Let it open to my nephews. Let it open to my children. Open it wider. He said, give me that praise. Give me that praise. He inhabits the praises of his people. So 7 times a day. And I said, okay, I'm going to be intentional about it. I'm going to praise you 7 times a day. And I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to stop throughout the day and say, Lord, I praise you. Lord, I give you praise. I give you honor. You're wonderful. You're marvelous. You're awesome. You're an awesome God. And then the psalmist said in that same text, get this, he said, and I said, okay, so I got to tell me what to say as I'm praising you. Should I just give you the praise that I normally give you? Here's what the psalmist said. In Psalms 119, verse 161, he said, my heart stands in awe of your word. My heart stands in awe of your word. That means like, I look at your word and my heart be like, oh man, your word is good. So I said, okay, David said, evening, morning, and at noon will I praise you. Will I pray to you and I will lift my voice evening, morning, and at noon. I said, that's only 3 times. I got to give you 7. And the Lord said, I said, okay, I'm going to have to. And the Lord said, write it down. Write the vision and make it plain. What are your 7 times a day that you're going to praise me? Be intentional. So I said, okay, here's my 7 times. I'm going to praise you early in the morning around 6 a.m. By then I've had a cup of coffee and I'm alert. I'm going to praise you at mid-morning at 8 a.m. I'm going to praise you at noonday at 12 noon. I'm going to praise you at midday at 2 p.m. I'm going to praise you at mid-afternoon, 2 p.m. I'm going to praise you at midday, that's 4 p.m. I'm going to praise you in the evening at 6 p.m. And then I'm going to praise you at night at 9 p.m.
Come on. That's good.
So I wrote it out. I said, okay, there's a lot of times I said, I know it's morning and it's noon and it's evening and it's night, but he said, then there's mid-morning and there's mid-afternoon.
Come on. Yeah.
I said, okay, I wrote them down. He said, now give me some times that I can expect to hear that praise. Yeah, so today I was at work, it was about 4 o'clock. Holy Spirit said, hey, it's time to praise. I was like, whoa, Sunday, my heart stands in awe of you. I had to go to the bathroom, though, because I was about to say, I better not do it right here in front of the customer. I'll be back. I'm in the bathroom. My heart stands in awe of you. I'm just in awe of you. I turned the water on, too, so it got loud. I turned the water on. But I made a commitment, and I was intentional about my praise to him because I'm in a season where I know I have an opportunity. I have access to God, and I want to utilize my access in a way that pleases him.
Yes, God. Yes. I love it. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So y'all want me to say those again, or you going to just set your own times? You got your own times set up.
I like your time.
Okay, so you got morning, noon, evening, and night. And then you have mid-morning and mid-afternoon. Wait, you got morning?
Mid-morning.
You got early morning. I'm sorry. Thank you. Early morning. I'll just give you what I wrote. Early morning, 6 a.m. Mid-morning, 8 p.m.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Thank you. See, I get excited and start. That's why my mama used to, girl, sit down somewhere now. You're moving too fast. Mid-morning, 8 a.m. Noonday, and that's 12 noon. Mid-afternoon, that's 2 p.m. Midday, that's 4 p.m. Evening, my evening is 6 p.m. And then night. And my night is 9. Now, some of you might move your night up or down or move your hours that are conducive to your life and your work schedule. But this is what I covenant with God. And I wrote it down so I could be intentional. And then I also wrote a scripture that I just carry around with me. I just wrote this so, because you don't remember everything. So I wrote this one, Isaiah. I say this one as well, Isaiah 61, 10 and 11. I wrote it and just keep it in my purse. And it says, I will rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall be joyful in my God. For he has clothed me with his garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, as a bride adorns herself with jewels. For as the earth brings forth its bud, as the garden causes the things that are sown in it to spring forth, so the Lord God will cause righteousness and praise to spring forth for me before all nations. So I do that one, and I do my heart stands in awe of you, and that satisfies the Lord. And it takes me just that quick to get it done. Then I walk back out and, hey, how y'all doing? Right? And then I know my times now. You can set your clock to it, your phone or whatever, just 7 times a day. That's the kind of stuff that pleases God. While you're in this season, this time that the heavens are open for you, activate the heavens. Activate your blessings. They're there for you. But if you don't activate them, if you don't speak to them, nobody will speak to them for you. I'm not going to be like, send her blessings, Lord. Open her mouth, because that's the way you activate your blessings. Yeah. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 4:13, I believe, and therefore I spoke. And he says, with the same faith, we all speak. With the same kind of faith, we speak to our blessings. All right, we're getting this done tonight. 2 Kings chapter 2. Who's got that? Chapter 7, verse 2. All right, Susan's going to read that 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 2 for us. 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 2. Because 2 and 19 are about the same.
I'm reading 19.
Okay.
Then that officer had answered the man of God and said, now look, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, could such a thing be? And he had said, in fact, you shall see it with your eyes, but you shall not eat of it.
Yeah. So he was in doubt. Doubt. When the Bible talks about an open heaven, here's what the Lord showed me. There are times when the heavens are open, and there are times when they're not.
That's it. Yeah. Yep.
There are. God wouldn't say, he wouldn't talk about an open heaven and show us examples of an open heaven if there wasn't an opposite, right? So the heavens are open at certain times in people's lives. Jesus, when his ministry began, the heavens opened.
Yeah, right.
And when the heavens opened, here's what he said. He said from this point on, when he started his ministry, you shall see the heavens open and the some angels ascending and descending. He was letting them know, now that my ministry has begun, it's a ministry where you're going to see supernatural things. I'm telling you that about the gathering. Now that we have this open heaven encounter with God, we will see supernatural things happening. Don't be surprised if angels just show up on your behalf. Don't be surprised if you see sightings that you've never seen before. Because like it was for Jesus, when he began his ministry, the heavens opened up and they stayed open because he stayed obedient. And that's why he said, I only do what I see the Father doing. People were wondering, how can you see the Father doing something and then do it? He said, because the heavens are open. I have an open heaven ministry. I have an open heaven life. That's what my calling is. It's to open the heavens and keep them open so that others can experience the heavens.
Yes.
So that others can see it.
Yes.
God wants not just you to experience a supernatural phenomenon. It's not enough for you alone. Your whole nation needs the heavens open. Just like it was years ago for South America. People cried out, the heavens open, and now it's a mecca for Christianity. Now they have some of the biggest revivals, some of the biggest ministries in the world in South America, simply because some people got desperate, started to cry out to the Lord, sought the Lord while he may be found. The heavens opened up and the nation changed. 3 decades later, it's still changed. Why? Because they're still experiencing that open heaven encounter. It didn't close up. Don't let your disobedience, your doubt, close the heavens for you. And everybody else is walking around experiencing the abundance and the blessings of the Lord. And you walking around like Linus, Charlie Brown, with the cloud, in the dirt, dust just following him. And what's his name? Pigpen, that's his name. Poor Linus, I done lied on her. All right, Linus, forgive me. Pigpen, your friend. Yeah, don't be like Pigpen, where everything is just dark and gloomy and cloudy for you and then other people. And then you get mad because other people are being blessed. But you have the same opportunity to stand in the same place of obedience to activate your blessings just the same. And don't think you can placate God and I'm going to get mine anyhow because he loved me. He loves you, but he has principles that he's laid down that he will not violate because of his love for you. He didn't violate him for his son. He still had to go to the cross. So he's not going to violate him for us. That's just a word right there. That's a word. That's a word that makes you want to say, you know what, because he loved me, I want to extend that same love back to him by acting in obedience. And obedience is not a hard thing. Right. It's obedience is just an act of love. I mean, you know, when you were growing up, and then it's just an act of love. Wasn't that deep right there? It's just an act of love. You know, there were times when I just so wanted to please my parents and I would be obedient because I wanted to make them happy. I want my parents to be proud of me. I want my mom to look at her daughter's life and be proud of who her daughter, the godly woman that her daughter has become. I want to please that. When my mother was going through her afflictions, I wanted to be there out of obedience to just serve her because she gave her life for us. Right. And it's not like I feel like I got to return the favor, but love says this is the person that I love. And I'm not doing it out of because I feel obligated. Thank you. I'm doing it out of inspiration. When someone serves you out of inspiration, that's the best love ever. When they serve you, not because they got to do it, and nobody. When you go to work and you feel like you got to go to work, you go with a nasty attitude. You do it, be like, I got to go to work. I remember one day I'm saying, all my friends were out eating. I said, I was working swing shift. I got to go, you guys. I got to go to work. And my friend stopped me. He said, Kim, you don't got to go to work. I said, I don't? Well, what I'm going to do? He said, no, you don't got to go to work. You get to go to work. It's a privilege for you to get to go to work. You get to go there and make money, and you get to serve others. What a privilege. He said, I think you're going to start to love your job when you see it differently. See, we see dimly. Here's what Paul said. We see dimly through a glass. He said, but when that which is perfect, let's go there. I think we need to go to that scripture. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That wasn't in our notes, but we're about to land the plane, so I know you guys are tired. I'm old.
We're good. We're good.
Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. This was just right there from the Holy Spirit right there. Here's what Paul says. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 9. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 9. I want to make sure everybody's there. You guys all there?
Yes.
Here's what he says. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. And then he goes on in verse 11. He says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly. But then, what? That's what an open heaven encounter is. It's when men see God face to face. When they experience God in a way that takes them out of all that natural carnal stuff into a realm of trust and faith. Yes. Where I believe what I see. This isn't just some hocus pocus. I believe what I see. And what I'm seeing is not natural, it's spiritual. I see blessings coming my way. I see favor in areas I never thought I'd get favor. I see books. I see anointing increasing. I see a supernatural thing happening where I lay hands on the sick and they recover. I see me speaking to the masses. I see some things that I don't see in my natural. But when I look at his face, I see my destiny. Not only do I see my destiny, but I believe my destiny. Too often people are looking at things that are natural and carnal and getting discouraged. And when the heavens are open, stop looking from what you can see and look from a place of faith of what you know. What does this word say? That's what's true.
Amen.
That's what's true. All this other stuff will pass away. But this thing right here that is true, it'll last. I'm talking to myself right now. This thing right here will last forever. That's why I trust it more than I trust my eyes.
Yes.
I trust it more than I trust my own mind. I trust it more than I trust any other person. Because this thing will last. This thing will die and shed off. I'll shed it off. But this thing right here, every word that I've received, I'm
clothed in it. So when I see his face, I look like him. I look like him. I see myself looking like God. I don't see myself as a failure. You cannot stop looking at yourself as a failure. Stop looking at your past and look at your future. Where is my future? It's in his word.
Come on. Yes. Yes.
It lets me see him and his plan for my life. Well, Pastor Kim, I've never seen his face. Look in the word and you'll see something you've never seen before. And this isn't for the elect. This isn't for the brilliant. This isn't for those that have a PhD. This is for the simple. The entrance of his word brings light. It gives understanding to the simple. So you've been complicating it too much. You've been trying to think your way through it when you just got to faith your way in it. He is talking to me tonight. Really, I hear the Lord like, stop looking at what I know. What you know is what's been keeping you hung up. What you know is what's been keeping you held back. Because it keeps you looking at what you can see rather than what he wants to show you.
Come on. Yes. Jesus.
Been looking at all the wrong things. Looking at what I know. Well, that's what my mama said. Well, she could have been wrong too. She's a human. Yes, she's fallible. But this is infallible.
Right.
So here's what Paul says. He says, for we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part will be done away with. When the perfection of God came upon man, it was the Holy Ghost. The perfection of God. People think that which is perfect is going to come when we die. And then the restoration of the world, and that's when it's going to all be perfect. No, there is something perfect on the inside of you right now. Through all of your mistakes, all of your mess ups, all of your craziness, all of your indecisions, there's still the perfection of God on the inside of you. And what God wants you to do is tap into that perfection on the inside of you. You're not perfect, but the perfection of God is on the inside of you because he is perfect. And he dwells on the inside of man. So therefore, you have something on the inside of you that can change everything around you.
Yes.
He said, when that which is perfect it came. It happened on Pentecost. It happened the day I stopped trying to think about speaking in tongues and I just spoke. The day I stopped thinking about getting filled and he filled me. And he filled me. And he didn't fill me because somebody was telling me, say sha-ba-ba-ba-sha. He filled me because I said, I got to have your perfection because I'm too messed up without it.
Jesus. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
And then he filled you. And you're getting the infilling of the Holy Ghost was not what you did. It's what he had already done for you. People that have come and gone out of the earth have that same perfection, that they were filled with the Holy Ghost. And we got to see the evidence of that perfection as they moved through life and did supernatural things. They were doing things that a man can't do.
Yeah.
A man can't walk on water.
Jesus.
But they was.
Jesus.
What do you mean? Well, why were they walking on water? Because they had enough word and faith to walk. He didn't walk on water. He walked on the word. Jesus said, come. He said, if it's you, bid me to come. Jesus then said, let me hold your hand and show you how to tread, how to walk on water. We want to do water walking 102, water walking 101. We're going to show you how to tread on water. No, Jesus just said, come.
Yes.
And his faith said, okay.
Come on.
Because they were under an open heaven. When you're under an open heaven and Jesus said, come, go. Don't be calling me from a pastor. I think the Lord is talking to me. I'll be like, girl, I'm asleep. Go. Now y'all gonna be scared to call me. So well, she said go. No, that's a prophetic word for someone. That's a prophetic word. It's because they were under an open heaven. The heavens had opened up over Jesus. He said, from now on, you will see the heavens
telling you, from now on, in the gathering, you will see the heavens and angels ascending and descending. Your help, ministers from heaven, sent to help you get it done. That's what you're going to see from now on. Don't tell me you're not under an open heaven. If you're in the gathering, if you're a partner of the gathering, a friend of the gathering, if you sowed in a seed in the gathering, you're under an open heaven. And from now on, you will see a supernatural manifestation of it. We see dimly. I used to see dimly. I saw everything. I saw the cup half full. Spent my life trying to fill up the cup. When I finally got empty enough and believed him to fill it up, he filled my cup. Yeah. So the psalmist said, fill my cup, Lord. The girl keeps saying, fill my cup, fill it up. Because I used to see it half empty. But now I see it overflowing. Because I see in the mirror. And when I see in the mirrors, I see my God in me. I see his perfection. Okay, y'all know we got to get this done. Y'all know we got to get this. You got that, didn't you, Glenice? Glenice like, whoa. Yeah, we see. And then that's why he said, Glenice, he said, so after I looked in the mirror and I saw him, he said, and then I used to be a child. I act like a child, thought like a child, understood like a child, had minimum understanding, just hard-headed. People tried to tell me stuff. I tried to tell them what I know rather than good. But I was a child. I was acting like a child. I was responding like a child. I was thinking like a child. That's why I can't trust him with money, because I can't trust it to give him money, because I got a childish way about money. I handle money like a kid. Yeah, that's why I said bring the tithe. Not all your money, bring me my money into the storehouse. And what my money's going to do for your money is it's going to multiply. He said, so when I put away childish things, I stopped looking at partiality and looked at completion. Okay, let's just land this plane. Okay, because we want to go home. Okay, so Colossians 3. Colossians 3. That's good, isn't it? That's good. That's God. That's God all day long. I didn't even study today. For real. I just said, okay, God, we gonna finish this because I'm gonna rush through it tonight and we can go on and eat. But God was like, girl, please sit down somewhere. Okay, girl. Okay, Jesus. All right, Colossians chapter 3.
Okay, 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Oh, that's sorry. Ooh, I just love it. People just love. They're so excited about the word. All right. She's like, you're not about to read my scripture. Don't go hold your mule. Amen. That is so awesome, though. That people are like, I love that scripture. I want to give voice to a word that I love. Ooh, I want to give voice to a word that I love. Come on. Activate that blessing. You better activate. Girl, you're going to make me run.
If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth.
Oh, that's so deep right there. Come on, that's a hallelujah all day long. Don't be carnal, be Christ-like. Don't be natural, be spiritual. He says, if then you were raised with Christ. You were?
Yes.
You were? Yeah, you were. Every day you get up, I'm raised with Christ. I done died to myself. That's why I can live in this open heaven, because no flesh can glory in his presence. So when you have died, the moment you gave your heart to the Lord and you got baptized, you were buried with him in baptism, and what rose up was his perfection that gave you protection.
Come on.
He says, because you are raised up with Christ, you above the storm. You above the tribulation. You above the pettiness. You above the silliness. You above being broke. You above being sick. You above. That's why he said, set your mind on things above, because you are above all of that stuff. And what brings you back down to all of that stuff is fear, doubt, intimidation, Christ is.
Amen.
Seek those things that are above. How do I seek them? I speak them. That's how I seek them. I just speak them. That's why you got to get, the only way to get your blessings is to decree a thing. God's got all of these treasures in heaven. He says he will open for us the heavens. He will open his treasures, the heavens. He's got all of these treasures for us. And he's literally pulled back the curtains. And he said, call it into the earth.
Yes.
And you still thinking you don't deserve it. You were raised with Christ. Not going to be. Not tomorrow. Not when you do everything right. The perfection of God in you gives you the power to speak as God. As he is, so are we in this earth. If you will decree a thing, he will establish it. So you got to speak to your blessings because here.
Come on, Jesus. Come on.
He just looking into the earth. He just looking. The heavens are open. What you waiting for? Speak to it. Well, you can't do it. I mean, you don't even have enough money. Mine go back now. Speak to it. Somebody else just walk over to that open heaven and be like, I'm a business owner. I'm a multi-millionaire. I'm a billionaire benefactor. The blessings of the Lord make me rich and add no sorrow to it. Somebody else just start walking and decreeing in that open heaven, and things start to happen. Things start to happen. And it might not even happen in that moment, but it's already done because it happened in the moment. You just didn't see the manifestation of it, but you believe that it happened because you spoke to it. Paul said, I believe and therefore I spoke.
Amen. Amen.
I'm not going to wait till I see it to believe it. I believe what I'm speaking because I'm not speaking on my own volition. You're speaking by the will and the unctioning of the thing that is perfect on the inside of you. You on your own, your natural man don't know how to apprehend these things, but the thing that's on the inside of you that's connected to his perfection. Seek those things. Stop playing it small. Stop being little. Stop being little. You little when you're down here. Your shadow is so big it intimidates your enemy. He thinks you're bigger than you are.
Yes, yeah.
He thinks he's like, man, that's a big lion. And you over there acting like a kitty cat. And you remember the picture of the lion and the cat, the image? The enemy sees you in that perfection. He understands all of these spiritual things. He was the worship leader in heaven. He was in heaven. So the devil is not ignorant of heavenly things. He knows that you have access to something that you're not apprehending, and he's laughing all day long. That's why Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, the Lord says, I will not have you ignorant of the enemy's schemes.
Yep.
What's his scheme? His scheme is to keep you small.
Yeah.
Keep you thinking about things in the earth. Why are you still thinking about the bills? They still ain't got paid. You might as well think on something else. That'll get them paid. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. It says this, for you died, and your life is hidden in Christ, hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. When Christ makes an appearance in the earth, and he makes an appearance, and he comes in his glory, he never comes in his glory. The cross is a done deal. So he don't have to come bloody and beaten and messed up. He comes robed up, wearing the robe of righteousness. And the Bible says, and you come with him. That's why you can take somebody like me who didn't know the Bible, step into a moment with the Lord and the glory, and get supernaturally empowered with the word of the Lord at a level that I could have never taught myself this. People ask me, how do you know the Bible like that? I said, I don't know. I think God like crazy people, old people, and babies. And I'm not a baby or an old person. So he loves me. He had a plan for me.
That's right.
Supernatural. What's happening is supernatural.
Yeah.
And the more I set my mind on the things of him, the more of him I become. Come on, ready? That last scripture, who's got that? 1 Corinthians 16:9. All right.
On the first day of the week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up, as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come.
Here's what Paul is saying. He's saying, out of obedience to God and wise stewardship, when the heavens are open, people access wisdom. Wisdom of things that you didn't even know. You literally access information that you never learned.
Right.
You access information from things that you never learned. So you can't go to school to get this kind of wisdom.
Right.
It cannot just be taught to you. Because it's something that God imparts to you in these times of extravagance. That's the word I just heard. These open heaven encounters were extravagant. And they empowered God's people to do extravagantly and to be wise. The apostles in the book of Acts, they were operating in such power under that open heaven that people were literally bringing their resources and just laying them at the apostles' feet. Not to please the apostle, but because they were so grateful for the open heaven. And everybody that gave in that open heaven received much more than they gave. Because it was like the fish and the loaves. It was prayed over, broken up, and multiplied. So everybody got more than what they gave. And Paul is encouraging a baby church in their infantile state to steward that which God gives you. Because in wise stewardship, it causes one to prosper. When God says, I've opened the heavens, he means it. This isn't just something we get to just hope it's going to happen a certain way. Stop thinking, thank you, Holy Spirit. Here's what the Holy Spirit said for somebody. Stop thinking it's going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. It's going to happen totally different, but it's going to be so much better than what you're thinking. Your thinking is carnal and natural, and that's why you get confused. Because one minute you're spiritual, and the next minute you're carnal, and the next minute, when you're feeling that carnal pull, set your mind and start looking. And sometimes you have to physically look up and say, I'm under an open heaven. I believe it, and like Paul, I speak it. I'm under an open heaven, and I'm activating my blessings. I'm setting up blessings for generations to come. My great-great-great-grandchildren will enjoy this favor and the extravagance of God, because I'm under an open heaven, and it's not going to close. I'm not going to die and let the heavens shut up and my kids experience drought. One person in my family got saved in a sanctified church. It was my grandmother. And the result of that was the heavens open up. And now generations later, my grandmother got saved, and she got radically saved. She didn't get Sunday saved. She got saved, delivered from drinking, smoking, anything she was doing, got radically saved. And she's taking her grandchildren to church. Then her children get saved. Now her grandchildren, and then her grandchildren get saved. Now she's got great-grandchildren that are saved. The heavens were open up over her. Even when it seemed like she was in lack, she was never out. God always made sure that she prospered. She always had, she left it so when she left the earth, we wasn't struggling trying to bury her. She always had things in line. And I meant at the last 20 years of her life, she didn't even work. But yet God made sure that she had money stored up in her bosom. Literally stored up in her bosom. Literally. She had money stored up. And now I look, and what I see is a phenomenon. I see that the heavens opened up over her in Las Vegas, in a desert, and began to water her life. And just 3 short generations from her, we get a preacher. And now we get leaders, spiritual leaders, and more preachers. There are more of us. My mom's ministry now. That wouldn't have, maybe it would have, but it happened the way God wanted. When my grandmother experienced an open heaven encounter with God, got filled with the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues. The evidence of his perfection was released in her voice. And I used to think all that stuff was nonsense. She was sitting up there rocking in the chair, and all my Sunday. I'm like, oh Lord. Now I am her.
Yeah, come on.
And that same open heaven, that same open heaven that was over her in the 70s, where she got saved, radically saved, on fire for God, blazed a trail for the rest of us to enter into this place with God. That same open heaven is over this generation and the generations to come. That's why I know they're going to be saved.
Yes.
Because they're just going to be like Paul. Get knocked off their high horse.
Come on.
Come on, let's stand. You're in a good place with God. You're in a place where the heavens are open. And the only thing that can shut them is you. Partnering with fear. You partnering with fear, partnering with doubt. Unbelief.